After a 3-week break in the series, Network 10 welcomes you to this Queensland Raceway. We're just outside Ipswich at Willowbank and ready to roll the first race in this 3-race format. The first time since 2000 there has been a multi-race format here at Queensland Raceway. Hello everyone, Lee Diffie along with you. As with the regulars, Neil Crompton, Greg Rust and Daryl Beattie. But first up, Neil Crompton, let's take a look at this 3-kilometre circuit.
Good afternoon to you, Lee. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Queensland Raceway with just 6 corners. It might appear to be a simple layout, but don't be fooled. This track has a personality that changes depending on the temperature and the time of the day. We've seen it in practice and qualifying. It can also be one of the toughest to master technically. The first feature of the circuit is ever-growing bumps here on the braking approach into Turn 1. They're large, they're closely bunched. It makes braking very tricky. Turn 1 and 2 are quick, but the odd thing about Turn 2 is the radius tightens a little from the midway point. The temptation in the cockpit is to always push the throttle too early. The price you pay, you run out of road. The back straight leads into a hairpin turn. The trick here is knowing how to ride the bump on the approach. It's big enough that you need to take caution with the brake pedal or run the high risk of locking a brake and damaging a tyre. Turn 3 is also a popular spot to pass down the inside, and provided drivers make allowance for the dirty line, it's reasonably easy to make the move work. Turn 4 is also another passing spot. Again, the offline area is dirty down the inside and the move needs to be done a little earlier than at Turn 3, but does provide an open door. The final turn, Turn 6, offers another opportunity to pass. The shape's a little unusual, so you have to take care and be decisive early. And managing tyres is important here too. 4 of the 6 turns are right-handers, so it's easy to punish the outside rear.
Time to take a look at the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid. We've got plenty to tell you because Garth Tander has claimed his 2nd pole position of the year alongside Jason Bright. That's right, he put an end to Bright's potential of a hat-trick. And yes, that was the gelled went forward on the 2nd row. James Courtney, in his first top 10 shootout, has achieved his best qualifying to date as a full-time V8 supercar driver. Mark Skaife has been the fast man all weekend. We've got a story to tell you about him in a moment, why he's so far back. And Max Wilson made his 2nd top 10 shootout of the year. Yes, Craig Lowndes is outside the top 10. We'll elaborate on that in a moment. Brilliant qualifying effort from Dean Canto ahead of Todd Kelly and Cameron McConville. As we roll through the rest of the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid, let me tell you about James Courtney. He did have experience at the one-lap shootout in the Japanese GT series, and he put in a brilliantly smooth lap to place that gelled went forward on the 2nd row, and he feels he has a good package here. They tested here recently, and he is ready to roll. But not such a happy story, Neil, was that one of Mark Skaife.
No, he was the man that dominated Friday practice and indeed the qualifying session. And I spoke to Mark. He confirmed they did lift the rear roll centre in the car by 1 to 2 millimetres. Now, normally that makes the car turn a little better, but it's such a tiny amount it should really make next to no difference. They think the real culprit was the fact that he had cold starting pressures by maybe just a pound or just a whisker on the soft side. The car had no grip at all, and you can see it here at turns 1 and 2. It was sliding all over the place. Certainly exaggerated by the increasing cloud cover and the lower temperatures. And if you look carefully at the Friday and the Saturday lap-by-lap reports, you'll see that Mark's quickest times were not done on the first flying lap. So, in summary, they just weren't ready to go racing in a shootout, which demands instant speed.
Here is your pole man. 2nd one for this year, and Tander has been strong all weekend. Strong start at the front. Lowndes trying to press his way through from outside the top 10. Tander will take them into Turn 1 from Bright and James Courtney.
There's a bit of jostling as always in the mid-pack, and we need to look towards Turn 3 for that. Look at the amplification of those bumps through Turns 1 and 2, reference to last year. Yes, they are bigger, and several drivers have confirmed that with me after practice and qualifying. Look at this, the run down there to Turn 3. That was Todd Kelly and Mark Skaife covering.
James Courtney said to me just before the start of this race, he is so excited about racing at the front. This is the shortest of our 3 races this weekend. 100 kilometres, 32 laps with a compulsory stop for tyres as Courtney comes under pressure from Rick Kelly. On board with the defending champion, Russell Ingall. This is his home circuit. Expects a good result.
That caption that you may have noticed then had an important word in it. There was a forecast for showers, and a problem here for Steve Ellery, who, if you recall, we welcomed back to the series in Darwin. And he needed these miles at Darwin and Queensland Raceway in preparation for the endurance races at Sandown and then at Bathurst. Now, the showers have held off so far, but there's definitely a feeling in the air here. It's quite a bit cooler today. That is air temperature and track temperature by comparison to yesterday. In fact, in qualifying in the shootout, the track was down about 10 degrees on yesterday.
Further back in the field, Lowndes has made up 2 positions, 12 to 10. Canto lost 3, 11 to 14. And here is Jason Bargwanna fighting with Stephen Johnson, and Todd Kelly has slipped back. This is a brand new race car for the Holden Racing team. Kelly trying to eradicate this terrible run of luck that he's had, but he's sliding backwards.
It's pretty brutal in the mid-pack in these races in the early laps, and it's not hard here to find yourself slightly wide of the race line, getting squeezed because of the amount of traffic. When you do go wide of the race line here, as always, there's little or no grip, and it's easy to drop a space or two. On board now with the reigning champion, Russell Ingall. This is the approach to turn 6. Braking from 215 Ks down to about 80 kilometres an hour here. And he started alongside Mark Scaife, his old nemesis, on the starting grid, and they race together at the moment. 7th and 8th. Garth Tander, fastest lap of the race, 1:11.5. He's got a 1 second advantage over Jason Bright.
Neil, there were a few long faces on Craig Lowndes' side of the 888 pit bunker in qualifying. Lowndes' crew made a change, hoping to reduce understeer in his Falcon. In fact, what it did in the cooler conditions today was the exact opposite. It generated oversteer and made the car slower. Now, they're unaccustomed, that team, to being on the bubble in terms of being at the bottom end of the 10, if you like, in qualifying, and they didn't use all of the available green tyres. That, according to team boss Roland Dane, was a mistake. And we also understand that there's been some stern words, you might say, between qualifying and this race. To quote Dane, he says, "Don't bother me, we don't want to go testing and wasting money if we're not going to get the fundamentals right."
Well, Max Wilson's arrival for the top 10 shootout being late, explained by Craig Gore, was their power was down in pit lane at that time, and there was just purely a mistake in his arrival, so there was no answer for the team on that one. Canto spoke to him before the race. He started in 11th, and he's very strong this weekend for Gary Rogers.
And to fill in some of the details there surrounding Max Wilson, he did very well to make it into the 10. He laid down a time, but he was late arriving to pit exit, and you've got to be there on time. You've got to be ready to go when the light goes green. It's as simple as that. So they excluded Max's time, which means he was sent right down to the back of the 10.
And Mark Larkham accepted responsibility for that on behalf of the team. They thought when the power went out in the lane that there'd be a delay to the start. That wasn't the case, obviously. New fastest lap of the race, Jason Bright, a 1:11.4. The gap has narrowed slightly, 0.6 of a second between Tander and Bright.
Scaife has got past Ingall. You may have noticed on the opening lap, Winterbottom got past Whincup. Here's the Zinger replay on board with Scaife.
And really sneaking down the inside late, and the car right at the braking limit, and he got underneath it and did it cleanly. We've got a problem with Todd Kelly on the radio, also complaining about a gearbox issue.
Not again.
Yes, and here he is. He reckons he's got neutral. I can hear him on the radio. He's got a busted gear lever. Staggering that they could have so many gearbox-related dramas in one season.
Again, repeating what we mentioned earlier.
Yes, mate, we're just trying to get ready.
They cannot believe it at the Holden Racing team. Robbie Starr and Matthew Crawford, the engineer on Kelly's car, they shook their head when the radio chat emerged there from Todd. What do they need to take a trick in this situation? They've had some gearbox dramas this year, so hard luck for Kelly. Also, Greg Murphy's been on the radio in the early stages of this race. Rear grip, he says he needs more rear grip.
I know we've spoken about the HRT and HSV engines, how strong they've been in the last few rounds, but standing on pit wall here watching Mark Scaife and Neil, as we said, getting off the turn is just as important, but that car right now between these turns is pulling some length on the cars in front and behind him. It's got some speed.
So just to confirm that problem for Todd Kelly, he's broken the gear lever, and at the time that it broke, he must have been in the middle of a shift, and the gearbox finds itself in the neutral position. He cannot get it back to the pit lane, so he's out of the car, out of the race. This is on board now with Mark Scaife out of turn 5, on the run to 6. Mark is 7th at the moment.
Inside Whincup, forces his way through. He was not a happy man after the top 10 shootout because he has dominated all weekend. And coming into the shootout, he was 0.4 of a second faster than the next guy, but lost all of that with those dramas that we showed you earlier. Whincup has fought back. Good recovery from Jamie. He put in his best top 10 shootout lap of the year. It was nice and smooth and composed, and he's handling the pressure from Scaife.
Garth Tander's just told Matt Nielsen that he's happy to take the pit stop whenever they want now. He said the rears are okay. I don't know that he's looking for any adjustments. Remember that Mark did a 10-1 yesterday, a 10-1-3 on Friday at the end of the long extended session, and then a 10-2-5, and as you quite rightly pointed out, Lee, nearly 0.4 of a second up on everybody in qualifying, and then to drop the ball a little in the shootout and to start ninth. He was so angry when I saw him before the start of this race. And he's got a bit of fluid coming out the right rear of that car. I just noticed it on the previous corner. Not really evident there. You can see it's got a little witness mark on the side of the car where he's made wheel-to-wheel contact with another vehicle. But he's going to have good speed. The question is he able to do much with it?
The Toll HSV dealer team of Garth Tander leading the way from Ford Performance Racing's Jason Bright and Stone Brothers Racing's James Courtney. That's 1, 2 and 3. Then Rick Kelly, Whincup, Scaife, Ingle, Richards. Here they come. This compulsory pit window is between laps 5 and 22. But look how many cars we've got in the lane now.
Total transit time, including the stop, on average is about 38 seconds here. Mark Winterbottom being inserted back into the traffic. The reason they held him was because of the Steve Johnson DJR car. And those valuable seconds that he had to wait, they hurt.
That was Lowndes. He serviced. Good stop. He got out ahead of Winterbottom.
No surprise because of what we just explained. Winterbottom was held.
Murphy was in. So too Bargwana. Here we go. Back on it. And there is Stephen Johnson. He was 9th earlier in the weekend. Ended up qualifying 20th. The reason why, major gearbox drama. So those boys have been busy during the break. Marcus Marshall released. So too Steve Owen. Back on board with Scaife. You look at Whincup.
You may have also noticed on the warm-up lap, drivers had their lights on in recognition of supporting the cause of epilepsy here in Queensland with this Big Pond 400.
Bright's in, so too Courtney, so too Rick Kelly.
It's part of a Lights On campaign supporting epilepsy's Queensland awareness.
Go.
That was exceptionally smooth from Bright's men there. Let's see how the Toll guys go and Stone Brothers Racing. Bright will stay ahead. Kelly's already done. They've got to get him out, otherwise Courtney's going to lose a spot here. He's lost the spot. They fight over it. He's lost the spot to Kelly.
Yeah, but he's in the right thing. He got out of the throttle, inserted himself back in without making contact. He's probably going to be okay, but if he made contact with, I think it was Rick, then he would have been in strife, but he's lost in that manoeuvre, of course.
Some interesting choices, boys, in terms of what to do during the tyre change. Rear tyres for the 888 Falcon, rear tyres also for Courtney, but interestingly, Rick Kelly, they opted to change the tyres down the passenger side of his Holden Commodore.
Which we describe as the working side on this track. 6 corners, 4 of them turning right, so the left-hand side of the car is the side that works, and the left rear in particular can certainly see stress on this racetrack.
Craig Lowndes is on a hustle at the moment, trying to close in on James Courtney. This is Stephen Richards in the 7. 88 is Jamie Whincup. Almost the entire field has completed their stop very early.
See, they're doing working side on Stephen's car as well, as Greg just pointed out. 5.8 seconds now, it's Tander to Scaife. Scaife selecting to run a little longer to see if he can make some position.
Watch traffic. Hold. Okay, mate, way go.
Gee, that will have hurt Whincup as well, so he's lost a spot to Stephen. But at least they're aware. We've seen a few incidents this year where drivers have just ripped out of their pit bunker and gone straight into another car.
Better to be safe than clumsy. Tander still leads the way.
The smart call here, Lee, is that by Mark staying out on an empty track with what we believe to be a fast car, if you use Friday and Saturday as a guide, he should, in theory, make net time on the field so that when he does take his compulsory stop, assuming that there are no issues with that stop, he could make some track position here.
9 cars left to complete their compulsory pit stop, and those drivers are Tander, Scaife, and they're in. Here we go, Scaife and Ingle in, and Max Wilson for WPS.
And that's interesting that he didn't really go on with what we were talking about there. He only did a lap or two on his own. I thought they may have left him a little longer, but it'll depend on what their overall weekend strategy is for tyres.
And let's see what unfolds here with Russell Ingle, because we've seen on 2 occasions now where drivers at the end of pit lane have been disadvantaged. Will Ingle be disadvantaged? Depends on how fast this stop is from HRT. Scaife has already been released. He's going to get it.
Wait.
He will stay ahead of Ingle.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, that one.
And here comes the angry pack. Rick Kelly at the head of this one. Scaife will come out right alongside James Courtney.
And slots in, no great drama there. So Garth Tander saying that he was ready, but they're quite comfortable, obviously, with the speed in that car at the moment. He's extended a lead over Dean Cando, 15.2 seconds. Rears only on Mark Scaife's car, so there won't be any great balance issues with that car. It'll be easy to turn. That's the only downside of changing the working side tyres, Lee, down the left side. It means that one of your steer tyres, in this case the left front, is cold when you go back out. And there could be a suggestion that maybe on a day where it's a bit overcast and you're using race pressures for your cold start, then it takes a little longer to get it up, and so when you go to turn the car for the first few corners, it's a bit tardy, therefore you can lose some time.
Let's watch here.
He stalled for Garth Tander.
Don't push it, go.
That's such a shame, because he built up with that clear track position some good laps in the bank, and they've been waiting here. The HSV dealer team had been waiting for a clear pit lane. That's exactly what Garth Tander had up his sleeve.
Here comes Bright. Bright's going to have the momentum. Jason Bright effectively takes over the lead of this race.
Oh dear.
That has been costly, and that is not the first time that Garth Tander has stalled in the pits. He will be dirty on himself.
Matty Nielsen came on the radio and said, mate, it's going to be close, just have to get on with it as best you can.
It has been a source of frustration this year, the stops at the Toll HSV dealer team, and that will compound those frustrations.
And Matty's just given him some encouragement just to get him settled now. He knows that that's hurt, but he's got a fast race car.
We've got a very exciting race on our hands here. Look at this! Scaife has turned Rick Kelly around. And there's mayhem up at turn 3. And Scaife fires the car up, but has lost numerous positions. That adds to his frustration of the top 10 shootout. Kelly was in trouble. Ellery's in more trouble.
There was Craig Lowndes was mixed up in all that. I don't fully understand who did what to who. It's down at turn 3.
Have a big breathe.
Neil, from pit wall here, I saw that instant. James Courtney just got the better of Rick Kelly under brakes, got under him nice and clean. As he got under him, Scaife had the momentum. Rick had parked it in the middle of the corner. Scaife hit the back of Rick Kelly.
It wasn't big contact either, Darryl, but it was just enough to turn Rick around and unsettle Mark. There goes Scaife, the dive in.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the speed between the... Well, this is a better angle. It's because Rick's car is obviously one out and one wide as a result of James being underneath him down there, and because of the difference in speed between the cars, and everybody's at their threshold brake there, meaning that you're fully maxed out. It's not like you can determine whether you'll brake more or less at that point. You're nearly at the end of a big stop. The load's coming off the car aerodynamically, so it's right at the mechanical point where you're really low on grip. We'll talk more about it when we come back after this break. Paul Radisich leads.
And he has about a 1 second lead over Garth Tander at the moment. And then James Courtney runs in the top 3. If you've just joined us, there was mayhem before the break. Not necessarily this, but this was the second incident, as the Zinger replay shows us, for Stephen Ellery in the Suramay Commodore.
Yeah, he couldn't get the car turned in at that speed, and he surfed across the top of the sand trap. Fortunately, came out the other side there to the little grass verge. Got the thing started back up. So Paul Radisich leads from Jason Bright. It's an 18.2 second lead. Here's Mark Scaife again. I don't know, but obviously I don't know, because factually they're in the tower here considering it at the moment, but I don't know that there's going to be any penalties in this one because of the complexity of what's gone on. You know, Rick slowing down, one out, one wide from being forced into that position after James Courtney went down there, and then the nose-to-tail contact. Be curious to see how they read that one. And And then, of course, it was Craig that was also in there. Now, Garth Tander's just further improved the fastest lap of the race, 1:11.4. He's in position 3 at the moment. Radish is still to stop. And I think the fascination in this race is going to be that gap there. How much does it vary, if at all? Jason's got track position. Garth has shown plenty of speed all weekend.
And Neil, I can tell you that Matthew Nilsson, the engineer who works so closely with Garth Tander, has been just coaching him gently over the last couple of laps since the stall. Matty shook his head when that happened, unfortunately, during the pit stop, but he said to Garth, look, hey, those tyre temperatures, remember they changed the tyres on the working side of Garth's car. He said they're at optimum now, have a go. And he said, watch your corner speed through turn 2. He felt that Garth was losing some time through turn 2.
Well, I've just heard on the radio they will black flag Mark Scaife. He's going to be given a drive-through penalty for his role in the incident down there at turn 3. There it is. So there you go. Mark's not happy about that. No surprise. So 16.7 seconds Radisish to Bright. Jason just sliding a little there off turn 1 in the Cat car.
It's been a major motivating point for the Victorian-based teams to come here to Queensland and topple the Queensland-based Ford teams. Not all of the Queensland teams are Ford teams. You're looking at Team Kiwi Racing and obviously Paul Morris Motorsport. They're based up here, and this is their home test track. The majority of them are Ford teams. So for Ford Performance Racing, for Toll HSV, so far, that will give them a lot of pleasure being ahead of the Queensland-based Ford team. Scaife serves his drive-through. He lost 20 positions in that incident with Rick Kelly, and now it's cost him even more. And as we've seen so many times in this triple race format, if you don't finish well in race 1, it basically kisses your weekend goodbye. Race 2 is reverse grid, and that's an interesting news point since we're at Hidden Valley. The reverse grid race format will be no more after the next round at Oran Park, because of course after that we go to Sandown Bathurst, and after Bathurst it's the V8 Gillette Challenge at Indy on the Gold Coast, and so from then on no more reverse grid format racing.
Slowly but surely Garth Tander's taking a tiny bit of time from Jason Bright. It was an 11.6 on the last lap for Jason, 11.5 for Garth Tander. James Courtney at 12 even. He hasn't quite got the race pace of the 2 lead cars at the moment, but you can see he's got a comfortable margin over Craig Lowndes. So slowly but surely, a tenth at a time, Garth Tander is getting there.
And they're confident, Neil, at the HSV dealer team that he will be able to have a shot at winning this race. So a bit of good energy at the HSV dealer team. We'll see what unfolds here. In the meantime, I've wandered up to Holden Racing Team. No comment was the word from Rob Starr at the moment. He feels he would need to have a closer look at the replay of the incident between Scaife and Rick Kelly. But as you can imagine, the driver is not too happy with the decision by the officials at this point.
And I think that's a wise position for Rob, because it's one of those incidents that you need to look at many times to look at all the different roles in there. I thought it may have been one that they could have reserved until after to perhaps just muse on it, but clearly Peter Wallerman, the stewards, Colin Bond and so forth must have had enough looks now to have determined that there's certainly some form of case to answer.
Very strong run from, Darryl, very strong run from Stephen Richards. Daz?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting, like you said, Mark had some momentum on board into that turn, and there's not much more he can do, jump on the brakes and lock a wheel. But you look at his car when he comes down pit lane, there's not even a mark on the front bumper of that car of Mark Scaife's.
Good scrap going on here. Rick Kelly, who was obviously in the centre of that incident, up at turn 2, only lost several places, and he's back in 8th at the moment, trying to track down Stephen Richards and fending off Jamie Whincup. Mark Winterbottom is the next car in that line, who holds 10th place. As we're going to squeeze in a quick break, we will leave Queensland Raceway and come back to see if the points leader, Garth Tander, can do anything about Jason Bright. Rick Kelly versus Jamie Whincup, 2 of the young stars in the V8 Supercar Championship Series. This is a little further back in the top 10. Kelly, who's well placed in the championship. There's a good strong run from Greg Murphy too in the Super Cheap Auto Commodore. Murphy started 16th and he runs 11th. So that's heading in the right direction. He's just ahead, as you can see, of Max Wilson. McConville's back in 13th. Stephen Johnson has come from 20th to 14th. That's a good run. And Paul Dumbrell rounds out the top 15. half of this one, and we've still got one driver left to complete his compulsory stop, and that is Team Kiwi Racing's Paul Radisich. Massive test here as we look at one of the Queensland-based Ford teams in Stephen Johnson in the First Rock Home Loans car. Massive test here Thursday week ago with the main series cars and also the development series cars. The track was jam-packed.
Rick's got a bit of a battle on his hands here, hasn't he? Just studying this little battle. Just between turns 1 and 2 there, they get back up to about 190 k's. They've got to take speed out of the cars again down to about 140 through turn 2. Very odd-shaped corner. Requires certain demands. If you get impatient there and get on with it too quickly, you can run out of road very quickly. We've seen a lot of evidence of that already through the weekend. And when you look on the backside of the curb down there at 2, it's dug out massively. Oh, a little bit of contact nose to tail. Jamie Whincup with Rick Kelly.
You may remember 12 months ago here at Queensland Raceway, coming out of that turn 3, that massive crash from Jason Richards when he flipped over the curb. You'll be pleased to know that curb has now been removed, which makes life a little easier. Yeah, they just sliced the top completely off it, left the base there, and in the interests of safety now, that's no issue. They just come off there, in fact, even bringing up a little bit of dust, as you can see. So that was the one that 12 months ago launched that spectacular incident, and now it offers no resistance at all. It's one of those things that is no problem for many years, and all of a sudden a certain set of circumstances arrives, and it tripped the car over in a very nasty manner. Now Radisich has pitted, so the entire field has completed its compulsory stop, and there is less than half a second between leader Jason Bright and Garth Tander. Tander's turning it up. In this lap, James Courtney's matching the leaders on sector times. So perhaps he's made a little adjustment, or the way his car's balanced, it's working a little bit better in this segment of the race. It's getting tight. For Garth Tander as the series leader at the moment, he doesn't have monstrous speed over Jason Bright. So unless an opportunity really jumps up and he's got supreme confidence that he can get the job done, particularly the way the points are constructed, you know, just, there's not a lot of point having a huge lunge, certainly not at this point. Good encouragement there from Matty Nilsson. You're doing a top job. Keep it going, Garth, and he is. And he's got an impeccable record here at Queensland Raceway. V8s have only been racing here since 1999. A couple of years there were multiple events within the 1 year. Tander has something like half a dozen podium appearances at this circuit, so it's always been kind to him. He's always performed well here. And Lee's looking like he's going to have a lunge at Jason Bright here. Got it. Change of lead. Tander's done it and did it easily. Gee, did that quite easily, and Jason left him a lot of space, didn't really argue it. So he must have come from a reasonable distance out, and just a beautiful positive stop in the Toll HSV car. So sneaks up the inside of Jason, and now he's probably going to continue to ease away. He's certainly got pace in that car. Frankly, I didn't expect him to be able to pull that off so early. So that was a great performance, Garth Tander. It just underscores how well that car's working around here at the moment. And within a couple of corners, oh, Bright comes back. I was about to say within a couple of corners, he's put a car length or two on Jason. GT now focus on drive out of corners. Use the crust, pull away from him. Okay. Bit of contrast as far as Tander to Rick Kelly is concerned. Just having spoken with Rick Kelly's engineer, Eric Pender, he says, yep, we've got a bit of a handful on our, on our hands at the moment as far as the car is concerned. They're working with Rick on the radio, just trying to tune it on the run. He wouldn't get me or give me any specifics about what is wrong with the car at the moment. So Rick with a battle on his hands. This is a nice scrap too. Look at it. Rick Kelly, Whincup, Winterbottom, then Murphy. Good to see Greg Murphy back in the top 10, and he's in touch with this trio. Well, interestingly, he's a lot quicker too. 12.7 on the last lap for Murphy, who's in 10th. By comparison, Rick did a 13.1. So this little group of cars, as you look down their times, they get faster as you go back. So Rick at the moment is the slowest of the bunch, but he's got track position, and it's king in V8 supercar racing. So there's slowly but surely a little queue beginning to form here, and that'll create its own pressure. Staying out for that long period of time too has treated Paul Radisich well, because he's gained 4 positions on his starting effort, so he now runs 13th for Team Kiwi Racing. On board with another Kiwi. When you look at the winners and losers in the graphic that we're currently displaying, it's interesting that
now after that move made by Garth Tander, the top three have gone back to the way they started. So Tander, Bright, Courtney, that was the grid order. But then after that, it gets a bit interesting. Craig Lowndes, for example, has made great gains, massive gains over his starting spot. It was a rarity to see him outside the top 10. Now he's fourth. That'll begin to position him for what could be a good weekend.
Look at those bumps down into turn one.
Shockers, aren't they?
Up and down.
Yeah, the drivers think that the bumps at turn 3 maybe are no bigger than they've been year on year, but they certainly feel that the bumps into turn 1 are getting bigger by the visit.
There was a round of the Australian Superbike Championship here just a couple of weeks ago. I can tell you the two-wheel boys had their hands full too. On board with Max Wilson in the WPS Ford.
He's currently sitting in 11th, Lee. Fastest lap of the race for him's been a 12.2. It's hard to see your peak speed, though, when you're in a position like that, because you tend to be tangled with cars all the time, but it's not a bad performance so far from Max.
You know what?
He's a glimpse of Greg Murphy just in front.
He's in the top 50% in the championship too, Neil.
Yes.
He's in the top half of the field, so it's been a pretty decent effort from Max this year. Very encouraging. I spent a bit of time with Mark Larkham just before this race, and he said, we're just taking one step at a time. We're not, saying that we're going to do anything great, but we're really starting to refine our engineering direction now. We're getting better with each and every race meeting, and that's obvious.
Problem there again for Stephen Ellery. Just looking at those lap time splits, Lowndes is the one to keep an eye on, because of the top 6 cars, he's the quickest right at this point in the race, only by a tiny bit. But he's now showing the speed that we expected from the 888 car. Yes, I spoke to Roland Dane before the race as well, and as the boys outlined in the pit lane before, wasn't happy about having done 1 million miles around the racetrack and then to find themselves getting to the end of qualifying and not being in the game.
Looking at a good battle here between Lee Holdsworth and Will Davison. You notice some new sponsorship and new livery on that Dick Johnson Racing Ford.
Speaking of Will Davison, Lee, I spoke to him before this race, and he was very dejected because at testing here, he was matching the times of James Courtney. He and his teammate Stephen Johnson. Obviously, we mentioned earlier, Stephen Johnson had that broken tooth in the gearbox, which he lost time through qualifying. But Will Davison said, we've changed rear shocks, we've changed a lot of stuff in the car, and there's something wrong. Something's not right in the car. It's completely different to the test. It just feels really odd.
Jason Bright's got a brake problem, and here he is off the road. His last lap was a 1:18.2. Now he's come back on just in front of James Courtney, so he didn't lose position, but he lost a massive amount of ground, and they're talking about it on the radio at the moment. He's talking about having to pump the brake pedal.
There is still a decent chunk of this race to come. This bodes well for Courtney, not so well for the Cat Ford.
Look at that, lap 24, 1:18.2. So he dropped 6 seconds, and we've got a problem here. Can't see which one it is.
It's Barguana,
number 10.
That's it, pit out, and he's stranded. So Tander now enjoys almost a 7-second lead over Jason Bright.
Yep, there's not a lot we can do there, Barg.
And look at that, there it is. That's what 7 seconds looks like. It may have grown over the last lap. And we've got a safety car coming out on course as we go to a break. Tander's lead will evaporate. We'll be back. We said we had a safety car period, and this is the reason why. The Zinger replay. Jason Barguana in the WPS Ford off at pit exit. And that was the reason for the safety car being deployed. Darryl.
Well, Jason, the safety car was for you. You asked me what happened with the car. Obviously, sounded like you lost electrical or fuel, just went dead.
Yeah, look, I think it's had an electrical problem. I'm not exactly sure, but it was going pretty good. About lap 12 or 13, started missing, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And yeah, it's just shut down and it won't restart. So I'm not exactly sure what's gone wrong, but just another race tomorrow.
You and Max were together on track there for a while. Looked like you were gaining some good momentum together. Yeah,
look, we made a big change to the car for qualifying, and it really didn't work. But we got on top of it for the race, and I think we're running about the top dozen or so there. That's the way it goes.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
Rusty.
Well,
race is about to, and certainly is underway again. There we're going to have a quick word with Tim Edwards from Ford Performance Racing. Is Jason's brakes okay?
Yeah, no, he just had a little bit of a long brake pedal and it just caught him out going into that corner. So there's nothing. It's just a little bit of brake knock-off from when you bounce off the curbs.
It's a shame for you blokes because things over the last few rounds have been going exceptionally well. And I think a lot of people here in pit lane thought that your chassis, which tend to be on the stiffer side, might struggle at Queensland. But that's been anything but the case.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this is one of the races that we struggled at last year. But, you know, we've made a huge amount of progress over the last 12 months. And I think it's great to come here and, you know, with all the Queensland teams testing here and be competitive on their turf.
I hope the rest of the weekend pans out well.
Thanks, mate.
When Tim describes knock-off to Greg there, what he's talking about is when Jason or any of the other drivers rattle across some of these curbs, you can get some flex in the front hub, movement in the wheel bearing, and what happens is the brake rotor just moves a little tiny amount, just a fraction, and it's enough to just rattle the brake pad and therefore the piston in the brake caliper back a little bit. And then when you go to put your foot on the brake, you get a pile of rear brake and not enough in the front, so the pedal goes long, which means the brake pedal extends further than you want it to. You can't pull the car up, and often it can result in a bit of a spin. So very unfortunate for Jason. The good news is he's recovered his pace and he didn't lose any spots. I tell you what I was surprised about, that there was a safety car deployment for Bargwanna, who at that point had gone not only off the racetrack itself, but across the pit lane exit to the grass. I wouldn't have thought that they were worried, but anyway, that was...
Well, did you hear Bugs asking Darryl what was the safety car for?
Yeah.
It was for you. Look at this. Lowndes on Courtney. This is the battle for the top three. Courtney at the moment is the best of the Queensland-based teams. A little bit of bragging rights at stake here for Craig Lowndes. He's not worried about bragging rights. He wants championship points because he's second. He's only 8 points behind Garth Tander, who incidentally leads this race and is about to break Ford's tremendous run here at Queensland Raceway. Closing 3 laps.
What it has done, of course, is group these cars back up. Garth Tander, I don't think they're going to be able to do much about, but I don't know that it's all but over here. And Jason Bright now will be protecting himself from any more long brake pedal incidents by just giving a left foot tap of the brake pedal to make sure that it's got hydraulic pressure. You see that sometimes when we look at the Mark Scaife foot cam, just a little safety tap. James just got a little wide in turn 2 there. And that's going to cost him straight line speed. His corner exit speed will be down, so they'll all try and queue up down the right-hand side. And even if there's a tiny gap, then Craig will have a look now. A little change to the rules in the way in which things run as a result of the mid-year review, as Ingle has a look as well. You're allowed to cover, that is, you're allowed to drive to the inside of the road and cover someone from behind once you get to within 2 laps of the completion of the motor race.
Neil, you mentioned earlier today about the explanation of the track, and you get on the throttle there too early and you get pushed coming off that turn. I can say from pit lane here, watching that corner, that James both times has made the same mistake out of that corner. So I don't know if he's struggling with something in the car in that area since a restart, but he's done it twice there, and Lowndes has been on him twice into the turn at the end of the back straight.
Nice and smooth, 2 to go.
Yeah, the natural shape of the road there, Darryl, as you know, you've driven V8 supercars around here, kind of encourages you. There's something that it does, and you'll see it from this shot here with Russell. This is between 1 and 2. If we're back on with Russell, you'll see the shape of the corner. Right here, you want to grab the throttle, but when you do too early, you see how it pushes you wide onto the dirt. Drivers do it a lot. And of course, James has got pressure on at the moment. He's trying to make an extra spot or 2 on this racetrack, get away from this battle, and I think it'll just be a simple case of squeezing it up a little early and then just running out of road.
Russell Ingle has done a good job of distracting Craig Lowndes. Try and get him away from his teammate who sits 3rd at the moment. Lowndes is 4th, Ingle is 5th. Stephen Richards has done a great job to come from 9th to 6th. And this man here, Garth Tander, has almost a 1.5 second lead over Jason Bright. Can Courtney hang on? Can he sustain the pressure of Craig Lowndes?
What he's got to be careful of is he can't afford to be, as Darryl described it before, a little slow off that second turn, because Craig's a wake-up. He's done 1 million laps around here, and if he gets even a 1 or 2k advantage down the straight, that'll be all the incentive he needs to try and get up the inside into 3. Then what'll happen is James will cover. That's where you often get a little bit of nose-to-tail contact. The 2 of them have to try and manage that. James does have a bit of a gap now, though. This next little bit here is critical for James. He's got to get through here cleanly. Does he hit the apex? Not quite. Does he get off cleanly?
Yes.
Certainly enough, yes. So, and he knows from the mistake he made a couple of laps ago that it was at the end of this straight that would have made him vulnerable if he had bad corner exit speed. So he's probably got himself cleaned up and done now.
Courtney had significant engine problems. There was a misfire in the car. He missed almost the first hour of yesterday's 2.5-hour practice session. They rectified that. They had an enormous test day here a week ago Thursday where they started before 8 a.m. and finished with their headlights on. It was a huge day of work, and it's been enough to get Courtney up to third.
James did 156 laps on that day, so he would have been well and truly torched at the end of it.
But right here, right now, it's all about Garth Tander. Ford has won for the last 5 consecutive years here, but not now. It's all about Holden. It's all about the championship leader.
Excellent.
From pole to the win, Tander has done it. That's his second victory of the year. And he did it with style, and he even did it with a stall in his pit stop. Tander unstoppable. And the team delighted, understandably so. Good effort from the Cat Ford too, Jason Bright. And Courtney achieves his first top 3, his best result as a V8 supercar driver. Nice job at his home circuit.
That was a good job, and I think that'll be a welcome relief for Stone Brothers and Geraldine and everybody, especially the man inside the helmet, inside that car. It's been a bit rattling for him for the first half of this year. Paul Forgy there, that's relief for him as well. He'll be proud.
Just come back at the pit lane and park at 45 to the shed as we were earlier on today.
And you think about that man there, Paul Forgy, who...
Past me in our garage, or? Park at 45 to our garage, just outside, you know.
Paul Forgy rode that unbelievable wave of momentum and success with Marcus Ambrose for those years, only to get a newcomer to V8s and having to endure a frustrating opening 5 rounds to this championship. But at round 6, their home track, it's all come good. But the hometown boys have been outdone by some Southerners. Garth Tander on the VB scoreboard, our race winner from Brighton Courtney. Lowndes, that is a tremendous performance, 12th to 4th, ahead of the defending champion, and Stephen Richards, Rick Kelly, Whincup in the 10 along with Winterbottom, and Max Wilson got the better of Greg Murphy in those closing couple of laps. The teammates for Super Cheap Auto Racing, 11 and 12, and Paul Radisich will be encouraged by a top 15 result. Johnson made up 6 positions from his starting spot, while there must be a story behind Dean Canto's fall. He went 11 back to 16. Jason Richards went forward though. He made significant progress, and we go all the way back to the boys who had a tough one, including the non-finish of Jason Bargwanna and Todd Kelly. He must be ready to just scream. That frustration continues. Meanwhile, Jason Bright and his Cat Ford continues to get stronger and stronger, and it's time for Todd Kelly to come back to pit lane under assistance. But there's our race winner, Garth Tander. The points leader extends his lead. Will he be champion this year? Everyone were talking about Lowndes and Tander in the pre-season discussions. Well, they're the two at the top of the tree. Let's go down to the pits.
Well, Jason Bright, you finished the order of qualifying, but it was a tough battle. You had the lead on him for a while, but couldn't hold Garth Tander off.
Yeah, we had some reasonable pace. We were having some brake trouble there from early on, and I was having to pump the pedal every straight, and there was one lap where I didn't after he'd already got past, and it sort of speared us off. So if we can get on top of that, it'll be a much more confident car to drive, but pretty happy with the pace we had. We sort of... This weekend hasn't gone as smoothly as what the previous 2 had in practice and qualifying, but I'm pretty happy with where we are at the moment. Still got a fair bit of racing to do.
And what is it a knockoff? That was mentioned during the race that it was knockoff. Why is that happening? Is it from the curbs or?
No, we are getting a considerable amount of knockoff, and yeah, it's hard to say what it is. I mean, the curbs certainly make it worse, but even without going through the cord, hitting a curb, just going through a corner, the G-forces seem to be pushing it back too. So. We've had it at other tracks, it happened to us at Perth, and that was what speared us off in that second race there. But it's something we need to get on top of pretty quickly now. It's it's costing us a bit of time this weekend, but other than that, the car's a good package.
Still good to be at the pointy end.
It is, mate. After the start of this year that we've had, I'm just happy to score some points. So it's going all right.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, mate.
Rusty.
Warner, that stop
too. The two of them, like Rick was really
We'll hopefully get a word here with Mark Scaife shortly. As you can understand, boys, he's in deep conversation here with Tom Walkinshaw about his take on the incident, and it would be interesting just to see how he feels about it. I know you're pretty uptight about this. Just firstly, diagnose what unfolded there with James moving down the inside and Rick, etc.
Well, I mean, James put a good move on Rick. It was a good quality pass. In fact, I was going to have a dive at James, and he read it pretty well, and he went down the inside. But both of them were battling to stop. And when it happened, they got to the sort of turn-in point. James on the inside, and Rick was he was very wide, and both were sort of wriggling. So I didn't think there was any way at all that Rick was going to be able to get back, because I thought James was going to push him wide with it. But as it turned out, I went down to follow James, and Rick turned back across. I couldn't get out. So I bumped him in the back guard. And I obviously didn't mean to hit him because it was going to hurt our car too. The reality of it was it spun me, spun him. He got on with it. I couldn't get out of the way because his car's going each side.
So you lost a lot more positions, and that
positions, and ended up I got a drive through. So, I mean, if you're going to be fair about wrecking someone's race, both our races were wrecked for a 50-50 incident. So, I'd be, a little bit cautious about what we say, obviously, but it's not a good read.
Thanks, Mark.
And incidentally, as a result of all of that, he finished outside the top 20. It was a costly incident and not a good race result for Mark Scaife, but he'll pick up and battle on in races 2 and 3.